Hi guys, it's Phil
And Liam
from Die Hard on a Blank, and we're excited to talk to you about a brand new podcast we're launching called 48 Hours of Buddy Movies.
That's right, folks. 48-hour-long
approximately
episodes exploring 48 different buddy movies, beginning with the original classic that started it all, Walter Hill's 1982 masterpiece, 48 Hours, starring Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy.
And just like Die Hard on a Blank, our new show will explore the influence of 48 Hours on the action genre, one buddy movie at a time.
We'll be covering iconic franchises such as the Beverly Hills Cop movies, the Stakeout movies, the Bad Boys movies, classics of the genre like Running Scared,
Hyams Hive Rise Up,
Midnight Run, Red Heat, Tango and Cash, The Hard Way,
plus tough thrillers such as To Live and Die in LA, Black Rain, Point Break, Training Day, and The Way of the Gun.
As well as a few wild cards that you might not expect, such as RoboCop, Alien Nation, and, of course, Phil's favorite,
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
So if you're a fan of two buddies talking buddy movies,
then 48 Hours of Buddy Movies is for you.
Visit patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies to subscribe for the price of 1 cup of coffee a month.
See you in the squad car.
Or walking to the squad car, mildly irritated that we've been paired off.
Wherever. That's patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies to subscribe. Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Black Hawk Down.
It's Die Hard in a war zone.
That's where I went with it. That's where I...
Yeah, I mean, it'd be weird. What else? Oof, this isn't a fun movie.
Yeah, well...
It's like, woo! What do we got?
There's two things. I think, I don't want this to be burdened with too much, this is too real. So let's just take off some of the pressure off ourselves and talk about this. Let's talk about this purely as an action film that is based on real events.
Uh-huh.
It's not our job we're not foreign policy experts or historians or, political analysts, right? We're here to talk about an action movie so that we can sort of unencumber ourselves. Let's take some of that ballast out.
I agree to the extent that I don't think we can, I'm not going to get into the politics of American interventionism in Somalia in the early 90s, except to say that it's problematic. But I do think it's like, this movie, even as an action film, has some problems, in my opinion. So
we're in slightly different places on it today, folks.
Yeah, that's all right.
I love this movie,
and I fucking hate this movie.
Okay, so
but I think
should be interesting.
But it's like a healthy. It's we give every movie a fair shake, even if it's noxious.
Okay, well, calm down.
Okay.
So, what's your relationship with this one? Begin.
So I should say that I saw this, I think, opening night of the general release, so like January 2002, which was I think I was pretty ambivalent about this movie. I saw it with my buddy Mark, who like sort of had become my de facto movie guy in the high school years. And we saw Swordfish together as well, and a number of the other movies we've been covering on this show. And I hadn't seen it since. I don't think. Maybe I caught like 20 minutes of it on TBS or something like that in the past 20 years, but like I wasn't eager to revisit it. I do think it's like seeing it in January of 2002, 4 months after 9/11, it's like an interesting time to release the movie. It came out when it came out. And this is something that our last film, The Last Castle, had to contend with as well.
Yes.
But yeah, I saw it opening weekend. I was pretty Ridley pilled. Mark and I had seen Gladiator together, so like it was definitely on the list. And like the thing I remember distinctly was like really feeling, and I remember this from seeing it 20-something years ago, uneasy about Hartnett's final speech in the film.
Interesting.
And it like really being burned into my brain. I will say that like this was probably like many people, a really politically awakening era in my life and how I felt about the world. And so I was certainly looking at it through that lens. And now, half a lifetime later, like, this movie is a fascinating kind of political film. And like an astonishingly well-made movie. I think it'd be crazy to say that this isn't like top tier Ridley God mode filmmaking, despite my reservations about it.
Yeah, which I totally can understand and valid. And it's not. I don't want to quash that at all. But it's also tricky for me because I'm so personally attached to this film for reasons that will become clear later in the episode. But I do share and understand some of your first reaction because I saw it when it came out too.
Yeah.
I was hardcore Ridley pilled. This is what 2000.
This is a Ridley Scott podcast.
2002, January 2002. I was at university. I remember we all went to see it. We're all pretty excited film students about this movie. And I had a sort of similar thing where I was like, it wasn't really necessarily what I expected. And it's such a sort of bracing experience, especially in the theater.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's so rough, and it's not really a kind of traditional narrative. It's more that pseudo documentary style. There's a million characters. There was loads more in the book, and they even reduced the numbers.
A little bit of Oppenheimer vibe to the kind of like, a guy pops up every few minutes and you're like, oh, this guy's in this movie. Oh, this guy's in this movie.
But the difference in this, it's like dust everywhere and mud, and they've got helmets on, and it's hard to actually pick them out the first time you see it. For me, this is a film that I then bought on DVD and sort of tuned into and grew to really love. So I've watched it, I don't know, probably good 20 times. And it's pretty, this is the ultimate helicopter porn movie. It's not hard for long-time listeners of this show. It's pretty well known that I'm a huge Helo head.
You love a Helo.
And
Helo heads.
This is
revolver.
I mean, this is porn for the way Ridley Scott shooting a kind of mass helicopter insertion sequence. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm only human. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's like there's this like very famous Jean-Luc Godard quote about like no war film can be an anti-war film.
Right.
And I think it's true because like any film that sort of like makes these images and makes them exciting is engaging in a kind of like, we could say propagandistic kind of element. And that's I bring that up not to be like accusatory, but that's the inherent tension
I love
war
that.
movies,
Great
right?
point.
I have like such a clear memory of seeing Saving Private Ryan with my father and him being like absolutely like bowled over by that movie. And I would say that like the first 25 minutes of that movie, it's similar to like, this is like an extended version of that, right? Like,
yes,
and like
absolutely
Spielberg goes God tier in that movie. But and so I think that like when you grow up on these movies, I grew up watching Platoon. My dad showed me my dad's DVD of Platoon over there. The Dirty Dozen was like a constant in my house. It's a great escape. But like, I think there's an important distinction in how we view World War II versus Vietnam versus finally Somalia, the conflicts of the 90s, the Iraq War kind of, and they can't be compared. And we can talk more about this as we get into this movie. And particularly, I think the way that it chooses to portray the opposition, which is where a lot of my problems with this movie stem from. And I thought about it a lot in relation to two other recent military or military adjacent movies that do something similar and the kind of intent that they have. But we can get there.
That's a great point. And it's sort of like a moral spectrum, right? They start with World War II. It's pretty black and white. Like, it's about as black and white as you could get.
It's the great modern war, if you want to call it that, right?
There's no complexity to, like, you're facing down straight up evil if you're on the Allies side, more or less. I mean, there's no other way to put it, right? Like, it's just what you have total moral authority, and any art that explores that particular conflict is going to be on pretty solid ground.
Well,
but then as thereafter, Vietnam, much more complicated. Iraq, much more complicated. Somalia, much more complicated. So therefore, it does get more complex in their portrayals of these conflicts.
Yeah, and I just, to your point, like, I was talking to somebody about this on the phone earlier today because I was trying to parse my feelings before this episode. World War II, unless you're a piece of shit, is a universally agreed upon, morally imperative invasion of Europe, right? Like, fascism is spreading. Things are going to end badly. We have a sort of like moral need to invade, regardless of politics, right? And that's sort of like why I think the film Dunkirk, which this has a little bit of in common with, right? In terms of like
Tom Hardy connection
Tom
as well.
Hardy.
Yep.
Oh my God, I'm on him. He's so fucking good in both of these movies. But like that movie doesn't portray the Nazis at all, which is one of the most amazing things about it. But that's because that movie is ultimately about time is survival. That's what I think Dunkirk is about like time and survival, right? And it makes this very distinct choice, but I think it's also able to make that choice because it's a universally agreed upon conflict. The Nazis were bad. Vietnam's much different. It's a much more murky war. It's the first sort of postmodern war. There's not agreement and consensus on it. In the same way, to your point, that there's not agreement and consensus on Iraq. There's not agreement and consensus on Somalia. And so you have to kind of like, it's just parsed differently, I think.
Did your dad like this film? Do you know? Did you ever watch it? Like, I was curious, because he was a Korean War veteran, right?
Yeah, he went to Korea. Well, he went to Korea during Vietnam. So he got lucky. He was supposed to go out to Vietnam, and then the North Koreans captured a South Korean spy ship called the Pueblo. And for the next 5 months, everyone went to South Korea. And he was like 100% convinced that if he'd gone to Korea, there'd be no Die Hard on a Blank as hosted by Liam Billingham, because his mentality was like, I'd never get out of there. That was sort of the way he viewed it. But yeah, he was a veteran. A lot of members of my family are veterans, guys who had to serve or did. I don't know. I bet he saw it. I'm sure. I was looking for a copy of it among his DVDs and I didn't find one, but I don't think we ever talked about this one because wait. Yeah, no, he was still around. So yeah, I'm sure he probably watched it, and I'm sure he thought it was powerful. I mean, he raised me on The Great Escape, Dirty Dozen. Like I grew up watching a lot of these war movies.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty anti-war. I think I told this story before, but he used to call Robert McNamara on the phone.
Yep.
So I was raised by like,
Well, it's an interesting tension that we'll kind of talk about with someone that has very liberal, progressive politics, but also had served, and I guess in his case it was maybe more of was it a draft?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, or he knew I think he enlisted because he kind of knew he had to, right? But my dad was also like a true blue American guy. Like, I mean, his politics would be pretty middle of the road Democrat. Yeah. So I think, and also it's like hard to compare. My dad was born in 1942, right? Sure. Like it's just a different ballgame. Anyway, all right. This isn't the Bill Billingham. No, but
I'm interested because if you've actually, especially if you've actually served, then your opinion has even more validity on these movies and their impact in society, which is sort of what we're kind of wrestling with. And I'll get into my personal connection on that shortly, but. Let's get some fast facts in play. This movie was directed by Sir Ridley Scott. It was screenplay by Ken Nolan, based on the book Black Hawk Down, A Story of Modern War by Mark Bowden, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer and Ridley Scott, and starring Josh Hartnett, Eric Bana, Ewan McGregor, Tom Sizemore, William Fichtner, Sam Shepard, and many, many more familiar faces.
A veritable who's who of early 2000s actors.
It was distributed by Sony Pictures on January 18th, 2002. Its budget was $92 million and its box office was $173 million. So I'd say that's pretty darn good.
Probably huge DVD sales kind of movie too.
And it won 2 Academy Awards for Best Film Editing and Best Sound.
Can I just do a quick thing that we've never done before? I want to submit a performance in this movie that should have been nominated for an Oscar. Tom Sizemore.
Amazing.
Tom Sizemore, it's like makes me sad because he was like...
Are you trying to make me cry today?
No, but people think of... yes.
Because it may well happen.
I'm going to drink your tears. No, Sizemore's obviously great in Heat, right? He's great in Enemy of the State, but like...
And Saving Private Ryan,
of course, I forgot. But like, he does... I think that's an amazing performance. I have a really critical opinion of another performance in this film that I think people think is great, but I think he achieves with no words what another actor in this movie needs like the most treacly speech to get out in the entire universe. And I just think he's like amazing. And like in retrospect, like why don't we give more awards to guys who talk less? Like why can't we give the award to a guy who's just like doing it all with his face? I think Sizemore is like next level brilliant.
He's the guy that you want to be behind if you were in this situation.
Right.
If you were in this horrible meat grind, he conveys a kind of guy that's like you would follow this guy. You'd feel safe with him, even though a lot of his men do end up like in horrible situations. Right. I feel like he's channeling Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now a little bit, with that sense of how he doesn't flinch when it's sort of like a Zen thing where it's like the bullet's going to hit you or it's not going to hit you.
He never sort of runs. He always walks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of, some guys have that weird force field around them somehow.
I also just feel like we have like an unfortunate memory of this guy, and he deserves to be remembered for performances like this that are just astonishing.
Well, you know, I talked in, I think it was our Passenger 57 episode.
He's so good in that too.
He was my favorite actor of the 90s.
Yeah,
at the time,
it.
You know?
And this podcast has only made me Sizemore cast.
Oh, don't! What are you doing? What are you doing?
I'm sorry,
what are you doing to me?
I'm not doing it on purpose.
Now I'm thinking about Heart and Souls. You know,
that's a good movie.
The movie that makes me like,
I love that movie.
Weak 3 times.
That was a Billingham constant
what a
rewatch.
Beautiful movie.
It is really great. Bring back the 90s movies.
Oh, Tom. Always in our hearts. Die Hard DNA is our next section.
Die Hard DNA.
I'm trying to keep things somewhat on the rails here, as I'm a bit of an emotional wreck. So, how does this film connect to Die Hard, and why are we discussing it on this show?
I'm curious.
Stroke your John Travolta-esque chin.
This ridiculous chin.
the chin strap from Swordfish as we ponder why we're discussing it on this show. Well, here's my argument. The image of the helicopter crashing is one of the more iconic moments of the Die Hard finale, right? Kind of quite an original image when it crashes above the Nakatomi Plaza and then falls down the side of it, replicated in The Matrix and other films. Here, a helicopter crashing is the focal event of the film, which leads to a classic siege scenario where and I'm saying this with quotes, so good guys are vastly outnumbered by the bad guys, in quotes, right? Very, very reductively. Obviously, it's more complex than that, and are pinned in on all sides. You know, the movie that this reminded me of as well, which is also very sort of problematic in a modern context, but it is a great movie, Zulu. A classic siege movie. Very much
Zulu.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's told from totally the white characters,
it's like 1964
colonialists like point of view, but there is a little bit more of a sense of, especially how the movie ends, there's a sense of mutual respect between the sort of different warriors on different sides.
Right.
But it's not, again, I'm not the right person to parse through the politics of that, but just purely as a classic siege film, it has some commonality there, and of course Die Hard is a siege film. Authorities outside the conflict zone desperately try to solve an escalating crisis that continues to spiral more and more out of their control. They're unable to intervene effectively and have to rely on those on the inside to solve it. So very much an analogy there. In that respect, I think it has the feel somewhat of a disaster movie as well. You know, it's sort of like shit's gone bad.
A lot of people staring at screens.
Smart people doing their best to solve a crisis that is rapidly getting out of control.
Yeah, you know, to this movie's absolute credit, I think it's one of the few films that I've ever seen that somehow conveys a feeling of like utter helplessness in these situations. And like, I think a lot of the time movies get credit for doing this that just don't achieve it. And like, you know, our pal Matt Stroll wrote a really fun little review for this on Letterboxd, and he called this movie a quagmire. And I think that, like, in addition to the movie being a quagmire, the situation is an utter quagmire.
Totally.
And it's like so well realized. And you know, when you have actors like Zeljko Ivanek, who's like Zeljko
King
Ivanek,
among kings.
I know.
I love that guy.
I saw him in The Pillow Man on Broadway, and Sam Shepard.
Yeah.
The GOAT. staring at screens, looking stressed
and
out.
more shower in the house as well, and those guys.
Pick of a movie? I don't know. We'll have to see when we get there. Okay.
Mr. Ryback, cut it out.
What'd you say? Your dad's a hero? Why did I sound like you, Matthew McConaughey?
So you've also got radio communication, tactical combat improvisation, and a sense of symphonic escalation. We've got an Uber producer on the ticket, Jerry Bruckheimer, as opposed to Joel Silver, one of the kind of like iconic producers, especially of this type of movie.
What a BDE kind of movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Huge ensemble cast, plus 2 hour running time. Die Hard is 132 minutes. This is 144 minutes. I'd say similar on a pacing level as well. Like Die Hard, it kind of takes its time setting up all the characters before lighting the fuse. It's sort of over 30 minutes before they actually go on the raid that kicks everything off. And at its core, it's a film about embattled characters showing tremendous courage, guile, and determination while facing extreme adversity with the odds stacked against them. I have one last
please. Sorry.
point. Well, producer Mario Casar famously described the Die Hard films as all being about a guy who's stuck in a box, even if, as in Die Hard 3, the box is an entire city. And I would say that my last point is that the same is true of Black Hawk Down. All the characters are trapped in the box of Mogadishu. That's my argument.
I think there's also and Die Hard certainly didn't invent this paradigm, but I'm just thinking of it the first time, but a lot of these movies have a accelerated real-time quality to them, right? So like Die Hard doesn't really take place over, the 4 hours that this siege takes, or whatever it is, but it feels as though it does. And this movie has that too.
Great point.
You know?
So they both take place over one night,
right?
Where a situation goes from bad to worse.
Exactly. And there's also some Die Hard on a Blank All-Stars in this movie.
There are indeed.
I figured you would have listed those.
I was going to skip, but luckily I have got them.
Yeah.
Please welcome to the stage the Die Hard on a Blank All-Stars. Tom Sizemore, William Fichtner, Gregory Sporleader, remember him from The Rock, Jeremy Piven.
What was Jeremy Piven
in? Heat.
Oh my God, of course.
Jason Isaacs.
Hey.
What did we have him in? Armageddon.
Yeah,
right?
Armageddon.
Glenn Morshower and Sam Shepard.
Yeah, Sam Shepard, Swordfish.
Well known as a supporting actor in Swordfish.
Yeah,
predominantly known for that.
Yeah, I think that was the first line of his obit.
Right.
Swordfish actor.
There's also some Con Air DNA with the Army Rangers and their Leave No Man Behind credo, which is also a Jerry Bruckheimer joint, of course. But we will dig into all of this in much more detail after this quick break. Hey, do you hate ads?
Us too.
Which is why we took a stand against our corporate overlords and turn them off.
But Phil, when we started this podcast, we became mercenaries, and mercenaries get paid. Now I want my money!
Well, yes, while it turns out that money is still required in this society to be exchanged for goods and services, we only want to align with the right kind of companies. And that, my friends, is where you come in, because we are now actively reviewing sponsorship proposals for Die Hard on a Blank.
Imagine it. Your company could sponsor an entire segment of the show, such as Fast Facts or Die Hard DNA.
Maybe the Die Hard Oscars or the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz.
Or perhaps the whole darn show.
Yes, that's right, people. This is your chance to opportunize your message across a curated cross-platform engagement pipeline.
To activate paradigm-shifting thought leadership with boots-on-the-ground vibecraft.
In other words, if we can achieve brand synergy, maybe your company could be a sponsor on this show.
So if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of our highly popular and critically acclaimed podcast, email us at diehardoab@gmail.com and we can start the conversation.
That's diehardoab@gmail.com.
Sponsorship suns
rise up! And we're back with our next section of the show, Anatomy of an Action Movie, where we explore the tenets.
We live in a twilight world.
And there are no friends at dusk of an action motion picture. The first tenet of the Anatomy of an Action Movie is the premise. Premise of Black Hawk Down is as follows. So, based on true events, during a disastrous mission in Somalia, a group of US soldiers find themselves besieged by scores of enemy militia in the city of Mogadishu, a situation that is compounded when not one but two Black Hawk helicopters crash in the middle of the war zone. With the situation worsening by the minute, inexperienced Staff Sgt Matt Eversman must use all his skills and determination to bring his men home, save the pilots, and honor the Army Ranger credo, no man left behind.
Well said. Now, Matt Eversman is the Josh Hartnett.
Correct.
So we sort of agree that he's the de facto main character of
Yes.
this sprawling ensemble cast.
Yes, and I think it's important. We'll talk about him that he's an idealist. So I guess I'll just talk about my.
Please.
I'll tell you the story I've been waiting to tell for about 2.5 years. Okay, so placing this in context, as I say, for most of our longtime beloved listeners know that I have a huge thing for helicopters in movies. And it's something that it just does it. It does it for me in a major way. I think they're incredibly cinematic, and I've always liked aviation since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I had all these books and manuals about aircraft and of all kinds and helicopters and jets, and I've always just been into that stuff, right? So, okay, now this is a film that's tremendously important to me. And that I loved, and there is an interesting British American quality to this. That's maybe now I'm only just realizing is
totally
underneath underneath some of this, like we've talked with World War II, and the fact that this is directed by a British director, but it's a uniquely American event, and with a lot of British cast.
If I could, Ridley and Tony seem to have a interesting sort of pro-American mentality, despite being not from here and probably maintain. I mean, they both live here, right? They live here. They have lived here for long periods of time.
Tony does Top Gun as I mean, you can't get more
a
American.
Rah-rah American movie.
Can't get more American than that.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
They have a tremendous understanding of the American sensibility and psyche as portrayed in
It's actually interesting that those two guys, the past 40 years, have been responsible for some of the most rah-rah action.
G.I. Jane is another one.
Suck my dick. Incredible.
So, okay, so where I'm going with this was, I've always loved helicopters, and I loved this movie very much, but I'd never been on a helicopter. And then when this is going back, I don't know, maybe 8 years or so, maybe more. I think it might be about 10 years, 9-10 years. Anyway, the agency that represented me would do all these really cool things where you would have military personnel would come in. And this was all through the research department. So I would, you'd go in and there would be a talk from bomb disposal people or CIA officers or Marine generals or whatever. And you would kind of get to meet them and humanize them, because it was all about essentially having a NASA and people they want to be portrayed accurately through Hollywood, and they also want a positive relationship with Hollywood and with the mass media, right? So it's a sort of it's a two-way street. And most of the time, it would be these very interesting talks, or sometimes in a boardroom, or sometimes in a big lecture hall, or whatever. And I would go to as many of these as possible. They were fantastic. And then one day, there was an email came in from the wonderful research, the head of the research department, who's a wonderful guy, and he said, "There's this big event happening, and basically, you can go be picked up." What's going to happen is this. A fleet of Black Hawk helicopters are going to land at Santa Monica Airport, which is essentially a private airport, and fly you to Fort Irwin, U.S. Army Base, which is in Barstow in the desert between L.A. and Vegas. And you will spend a day essentially living the life of a soldier, what will go on at this base. And it was
yeah,
it's like, talk about a bucket list experience. So this happened, and I got to tell you, it was one of the top 5 experiences of my entire life. I have never had an adrenaline rush like this experience of being in a black hole. And the interesting thing about why it pertains to this film, obviously, for numerous reasons, but what really struck me about it is it's almost like being in a massive pickup truck, because it's so robust and heavy, but in the space of 2 seconds, you are at a massive elevation. So, which makes sense for what these helicopters are essentially designed for, which is like rapid troop deployment, right? Go into a hostile zone, drop off the troops, and then get out of there as quickly as possible. So to experience that, of how quickly this thing that seems so heavy and so kind of doesn't look like, it doesn't feel agile in any way. It's just like it's so bulky, to have the torque and the power to get to like this intense vertical height so fast was amazing. So this day was extraordinary. And it's dawn, but we had to be there really early. So you have the incredible dawn, Scott Brothers-esque light over the city of LA, flying over LA and flying over the Hollywood sign in dawn light in a fleet of Black Hawk helicopters. It was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. And then, we spend a day on this base and speak, and all kinds of different things that we would do, and have dinner lunch in the mess, and speaking with everybody from colonels to privates, and it really struck me. It was a very eye-opening experience. And one of the things that struck me a lot about it is that because I think there is maybe a misconception about the people that are in the military, or the kind of people that it attracts. But like everybody I met was like so erudite, thoughtful, like well-intentioned. It wasn't like I think the very unpleasant stereotypical idea about people in the military, especially in the UK, I think is more, it's just like a bunch of the bullies at school who can't wait to get their hands on guns, right? Like to be incredibly reductive about an unfair and inaccurate stereotype. So it was very eye-opening for me to sort of experience like, wow, and how this organization works and everything. So it was very seductive. And we did like a simulated raid because essentially this base is about training people for, they have simulated Middle Eastern environments or whatever, and you have to go through it with your unit and achieve a goal whilst looking out for snipers on the route. This is all like assessed afterwards and everything, right? So it gave an ordinary schmo like me, probably less than 0.000 infinite 1% sense of what something like this might feel like in a very, very reduced way. So I want to be clear that the character, just sidetrack, but the character in Bad Boys called Chet, who is the bellhop, who is like, I could have been a cop, but it didn't work out. Politics. Yeah. Like I'm that guy. I'm that guy. I'm not in any way trying to say that, it would be unbelievably ridiculous and disrespectful to draw any kind of equivalency between people who have actually served. Right. But this did lead to a period in my life where I was actually I was very serious about joining the Naval Reserve and doing I was wrestling with my own identity as a Brit in America and feeling pretty sort of like what you've talked about, the whole Irish American blown away thing of feeling sort of like, you don't really fit. You're too British to be American. You're too American to be British. You sort of don't really fit anywhere. And at the time I was just trying to like figure that out. Sure. And it seemed like a way to kind of make me, for want of a better phrase, a sort of bulletproof as an American citizen that really put something back. And I was so grateful to the country. This is, bear in mind, this is in the Obama years, right? Yeah. So to be clear, and then circumstances changed, politics changed. But I remember my dear friend Malcolm, who has come up a couple of times on the show because he subscribed to the Patreon. Shout out to Malcolm, and he paid the full whack. But he taught me out of it, and he was like, you're not, you're too independent-minded to join an organization like this. As much as you might have a kind of the movies like Black Hawk Down or that experience might are very seductive. So what I suppose the sort of point of this, in part, is to say the power of these movies. And it was also that experience, and it was also things that I was going through about trying to figure out my relationship with myself. And I also want sometimes to be surprised. Like, people kind of think they've got you figured out, so you want to be a contrarian and be like, well, no one will expect that I would do this.
Right.
No one would think that I'd have the intestinal...
I'll show them a little bit. Yeah, sure.
The intestinal fortitude to do something like this. But ultimately, I think it was a misguided idea. And then when a certain president was elected, it was like, okay, I cannot possibly... I can't, you don't have a choice.
It changes.
You're following, and you're also, it's not like, I can't be like, well, I don't agree with this. So if you're in a military institution, you've got to follow orders, right? Also, ultimately, it was...
Well, in theory, also, the army is supposed to be independent of the presidency.
Right, and this is something.
Theory,
is something that I actually asked these guys about, because at one point when the Marine generals came in, and without asking directly, I was saying, well, what do you do if you vehemently disagree with the executive about a certain thing? And their answer was, well, we serve the Constitution of the United States, not the president of the United States, which was that was in like 2016 or 17. So, and what ended up happening, just capping this off, I went to the recruiting office, and sometimes you go through these deserts of when you're as a freelance writer, and you just get like, this is partly another reason why this was happening, was I need to just not be, I'm wasting my life. I got to do something. And as I pushed the door open, my phone rang from a close friend who is a filmmaker who I've worked with a lot, and something was happening on some project. Sure. It was like unbelievable time. But I still went in, and I still did the whole process, and I was still taking it very seriously, but ultimately decided like it was not the right move for me for various reasons. I think if I had done it, it probably would have been something that would have made sense when I was younger, fitter, and wasn't married.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a huge thing. I mean, yeah.
So it's suffice to say, this movie is pretty special and important for me. So that's kind of, one of the things I wanted to kind of get off my chest and try and process. So a couple of questions then for you about this.
Well, I don't have the same story. I was raised by a veteran who was pretty angry about Vietnam and about most of American foreign policy, but was like a true blue American, believed in America. I think he would be beside himself with the state of things right now. But I'm glad I don't have to deal with that personally. I had a gig after grad school where I went to military bases and taught filmmaking to soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder. And my boss was the grandson of General Patton, a guy named Ben Patton. And my experience was that there were people sort of similar to you who were immigrants that felt that this would integrate them into the country. There were also, candidly, people who were like, I saw a bunch of war movies and I thought it was cool. And that's where I bump up against this, because like ultimately this movie, like all war movies, is propaganda. I think ultimately it can't help but be, because it, as awful as it is, like there's something cool about the gunships and the helicopters. And also, in fairness, a sense of community and belonging that you might not feel somewhere else.
And those, to be clear, for me, it was partly that, because being a writer is such an individual, isolated life, and I crave some kind of brotherhood. But it was nothing about wanting to fire guns. And in fact, we fired them on that day, and I hated the feeling. Yeah, I was like, a human being should not have this much power,
I totally agree.
in their hand. And while I loved the hardware, for me, it was sort of about trying to find some way to utilize the humble gifts that I had been granted in service of some kind of higher good, i.e., e.g., humanitarian stuff. It wasn't like I wanted to go and like get into combat. I wanted to serve something that was like about preserving democracies or helping people in really bad situations.
Totally.
It was that side of it. It was not, I want to be absolutely clear. It wasn't some desire to like slap a mag and a gun and
No, and you're not the type, but there are people like that. I think that's fair to say. And I think that like I saw the opposite side in helping making films with these was a form of sort of arts therapy. We were not therapists, but I met people whose arms were blown off, who had gadgets that, sort of fake arms, and people who like could barely process their own situations. And it was like a really moving experience. We would, we were told by like therapists that we work with, like, by the way, you're going to come back with a little post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, even in the 4 days you spend with these people, like I would spend the 4 days after, like, pretty incapable of functioning, like just depressed, because it wears off. And like, that's not to suggest that like I had that experience at all, but it sort of made me, and some of this could be my politics, it sort of certainly soured me on the institution, but made me sympathetic to the individuals. And there was a certain amount of like bunch of like progressive New Yorkers going to these bases with people who did not share our, sometimes they did, sometimes they'd share our political opinions and other times they wouldn't. And there were some tense moments with people. But it certainly like was a good unifier in terms of like, look, we're all just people trying to exist in this world. But like, I do balk a little bit at a lot of these war films because the verisimilitude of this film in particular, and of many others, can like be very rah-rah and trick some people into thinking like, I don't know, it's so shiny and glossy, it looks cool. And I'm not saying that this movie entirely does that. Certainly it does not. But I a little bit blanch at particularly U.S. military films, because I do think that like the relationship between Hollywood and the military is complicated, and what it's trying to say and what it's trying to do and who it's trying to reach.
They literally experience this pipeline between the two, right? They want to be portrayed in a certain way. You know, I'm not immune. I wasn't like blind to what was going on, you know, but I couldn't help but be kind of seduced by it.
I think both are true,
you know,
in equal measure.
Both things are true. This is why it's complicated. Well, bringing it back to the movie then, I think this actually goes down to perfectly to one of my bullet points, was that Ridley Scott said, and I'm wondering if you disagree with this or could maybe parse through it. You know, he said, I saw this as an anti-war film, but a pro-military film. How do you feel about that statement and that idea? In lieu of the grander history of cinema in general, and what you've said about Godard or film, cinema verite, or how this tries to sort of have a documentary realism. I think about like Battle of Algiers, or you know, these films that you used that sort of style, or that beginning of it wasn't documentary, but it was probably the most visceral look at combat we've ever seen on film in Saving Private Ryan. Just what does that bring up for you as a scholar of war films to some extent?
I think it's hard for a film to truly be anti-war. I think that even I think even, you know, great, exciting war films, like, I'll give you an example of a recent movie, like very good, well-executed movie that I think has like some equally problematic aspects, is Top Gun Maverick. I think that that's an amazingly made movie, but I think like it's pro-military. It chooses not to portray the enemy, but there's a whole bunch of ideological questions in not portraying the military. That's sort of a tee up to say that, like, for Ridley to say this movie is pro-military, and then to make a movie where essentially the movie spends 35 minutes humanizing the soldiers, and then portrays the Somalis as like bloodthirsty zombies.
Yeah, it's very zombie-like, isn't it? Zombie hordes.
Zombie hordes.
With guns.
Child soldier killing his father. But he manages to grant a moment of like wife and children grace, and then our only sort of moment of like humanity is like these children gesturing at them to run into the safe zone, the Pakistani stadium. Like, the pro-military thing aside, like, this movie does a disservice to the entire narrative by essentially, in my opinion, humanizing the soldiers and completely dehumanizing the other side of it. And in given an opportunity, in the scene where the captured soldier, played by Ron Eldard,
right,
Durant, thank you. To have a conversation with this guy on the other side,
right,
and to essentially just paint him as like a mustache twirling villain. You know, there's a great comp to this in Three Kings, when Wahlberg is like kidnapped by, or not, is taken. I shouldn't say kidnapped. Is taken hostage by these, and he has the conversation with that Saeed. What's that incredible actor? God, he's amazing in that movie. And he's like, they have this like tete-a-tete about like why America. It's like it fully humanizes this guy. It grants him agency and perspective. This movie grants no agency or perspective to any Somali who isn't like the guy at the beginning that they capture. And like, you know, you could chalk that up to like Ridley's telling a specific story. You could chalk that up to this is from the military angle. I get all that. But there's so much opportunity to just like for 10 seconds give humanity, give voice to regular people who are affected by this. And like, you know, one of the final images in this film is like the shot of the coffins, right? Like you see it, and he's already dwelled on like all these Somali bodies in the street, right? Like they're either victims or exoticized or a zombie horde. And like, it's disgusting, frankly. That's my feeling about it.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, that all those criticisms I think have been leveled at the film, and I think that's very, very fair. And I definitely sort of can see, especially this sort of idea of the dehumanization of the opposing force. But it is also a weird situation. I mean, look, I hesitate to sort of blunder into this conversation as someone that maybe doesn't know all the facts. And I did do research on it, but I'm not historians and I'm not a foreign policy expert. But these are militia, you know. Right. This is militia, and they don't have to shoot these, you know, at the soldiers, but they wanted them out. What I understand from this whole situation was this was initially a humanitarian mission and mission creep came in, and it then became, after some UN peacekeepers were killed, they blamed Adid, the militia leader, right. So they went after him, and in the process of going after him, they did things that were involved, to use a horrible euphemism, collateral damage. The civilians were killed by the U.S. military. So then it became like, we want you out, even if the intentions were initially good. Now you're just like so that there was a mass uprising essentially. And this was what Ridley explains in the commentary was this was one of the most like heavily armed, like per capita environments on the planet. There was so much leftover military hardware from I think a previous Russian invasion, that there was just so many guns around that everybody just went like and attacked this.
Well, he makes that clear in the market,
who are massively outnumbered, and they did drag Durant's body through the streets and stuff. So I'm not sort of. It's not my place to. This is not really It's not a black and white moral issue. It's a very complex issue, but I don't necessarily think it's like. And listening to Ridley's commentary, which is very thoughtful and very. But he's done so much research and context about the culture. Yeah, I don't for a second believe his intentions are bad, and actually think has a real moral authority in how he talks about it in a very frank way. But at the same time, I can also see how this could be perceived as just the most right wing. Blinkered, narrow-minded look at American exceptionalism, and how that can be really ugly.
It's even, in my opinion, so there's a couple things to respond there. One is that Sam Shepard says in the film, like, a lot of people live in this market, right? Like, but we don't get any sense of that in the film. We get the sense that they're in the market. Like, we don't get a sense, like, there's no real sense of, like, the human cost for the Somalis, because we really only do see the militia members. Now, I'm not going to sit here and like, I'm not going to be like, well, I need one shot of somebody but like, it feels so reductive, and they feel like they're like, even a shot of someone looking hesitant or scared, or like that maybe that they're doing something they don't want to do, but they have to do, right? Like the movie grants the soldiers in this film, that it grants Ewan McGregor, that it grants these figures. Like, I think that there's just not even any humanity allowed, you know? And I think that, like, humanity doesn't necessarily mean like we get 40 minutes of backstory on the general or something like that, but they feel so atomized and anonymous. The other thing that I would say is that, like, I struggle with the idea of moral authority because Ridley Scott's coming at it from a very specific perspective, but we don't have to debate that. It's just, to me, that, like, you spend all of this energy And the reason I bring up Dunkirk earlier is that it's almost the same thing. I don't feel like this movie, you know, if a film like Three Kings, which is 30 minutes shorter than this movie, can take the time and maybe, you know, kind of humanize at least one figure, give them a backstory, not say that their behavior is justified or whatever the case is, though that would be interesting to get sued. Like there's no attempt to like I'll give you like Starship Troopers does a better job of humanizing the bugs than this movie does of humanizing the Somalis, in my opinion. Like, it's afraid. Like, come on. We can be nuanced about these things. And I think that there's a certain lack in what the movie is doing there. And, you know, that is to say, like, this to me, this isn't entirely like a movie that like lacks nuance and lacks perspective. Like my favorite storyline in this movie, and I think should have been the whole movie, is the two gunners who get left behind.
I wanted to talk about this.
I am obsessed with this.
The
part
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Yeah, I just think it's
analogy.
Yeah, and the fact that they join up with the third guy and they're kind of like the Three Stooges.
It's
and
Tom Hardy and Ewan Bremner.
Ewan Bremner is amazing in this movie, and like he can't hear what. Like it's funny and it's human, and it finds like there are these little moments like this whole sequence. The moment when the guy sees the hand on the ground and picks it up and puts it in his bag, like the absurdity of it, the absurdity of war, the kind of like, there's poetry to it, there's artfulness to it. But I feel as though a lot of this movie is just like gunning down hordes of nameless, faceless villains. And like, if you're going to make a movie about a real event, give the other side a little dimension. And it just doesn't do that, in my opinion.
I mean, I think, you know, the militia guy that he captures does offer some sense of like, you know, he is pretty mustache twirly, great actor, and great scene when Shepard goes in as General Garrison and interrogates him, and he sort of says, this is civil war, you don't understand, you know, it's classic American just kind of blundering in with your size 12s and not understanding like, well, this is nothing to do with you, et cetera, et cetera. But it does get to the core of the complexities of whether interventionism is good or bad. Ridley's argument on the commentary where he was like, well, I was in favor of this because I think if you don't intervene, you get a situation like Rwanda, you know,
right.
but it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But let's just talk about the actual drama, the movie as drama, which we're sort of doing with the. Can
I make one more very, very brief point that I think that speaks to this? There is the possibility, a little bit, that the way this film is hierarchized is a little bit of commentary in that we never meet the generals back in Washington. We never meet anyone back in Washington. It's Shepard to Zelko Ivanek and Rorschach to the guys on the ground. And like the guys in the air, I think, in my opinion, both phenomenal actors, come off as like kind of clueless and a little bit useless, right? Shepard is doing everything he can. There is a little bit of like, you aren't there, you're not on the ground, you don't understand stuff going on in this movie. And maybe rightfully so, Ridley plays that kind of even-handed, right? It's like maybe there's a little bit of that there, but like there's something missing if here's a question for you. We used this phrase, I think it was on Black Rain, which I can't remember whether that's come out now before or after, but would you consider this white elephant art or termite art? Oh,
can you explain
it's termite art?
The
it's totally termite art. It's termite. So termite art would be, in the simplest terms, like sort of like process-driven. You're following characters moving through something. It's a lot more theoretical than this, and you're putting me on the spot, but that's fine. White elephant art is a little more bloated, a little more big picture. So in the annals of Ridley, Prometheus to me is white elephant art. It's very like obsessed with its own sort of like ideas and mythology
and themes.
The themes are huge. This movie is much closer to termite art. It's much more focused on the experiential, the on the earth. Kind of a great termite artist is John Cassavetes, in my opinion, right? Like this is termite art for sure. And it is about, it's experiential as opposed to thematic or big ideas. And, you know, it opens with this quote, only the dead have seen the end of war, right? Which is powerful
Plato,
shit. Yeah. Anyway, let's move through.
I mean, I think, you know, just I want to just give a little bit of defense of the film before we move on, because I want to, setting the politics aside, you've made a very strong case that I don't feel necessarily equipped to disagree with on that right. side. I can see the counter argument, but I certainly don't think you're wrong in it's all fair critique. Yeah. But as a piece of filmmaking, I have to say, I think this is like arguably the best combat movie ever made. possibly. It doesn't it's definitely not like, hey, this is cool. There are elements of it that are cool. Going in on, when the helicopters, when the Black Hawk and the fleet goes in and they're flying over the ocean, you can't help but say that looks absolutely incredible. But at the same time, you look at like Orlando Bloom's face; he's terrified. They're all terrified, of what's coming. Yeah. Except for maybe the Eric Bana character, who's like yeehaw on the side of the
music, like the.
I think it's incredible.
It's incredible, but it's very like. It's like that's literally a cue from Under Siege, right? Like it's.
Damn it! I was in my convoluted corner.
Oh, sorry. Fuck. Well, sorry. I've seen Under Siege 45 times.
Fucking hell.
But it has a certain amount of like the music to me kind of contradicts the kind of like veracity and fear, because it's very like.
Well, it's
exciting.
I will say this: the music, that cue that you're talking about, where they play the Jimi Hendrix, is earlier. I think that's just when they're just launching.
Okay.
And you have to have that. You have to have some sense of like, here we go. It's sort of also that there's a sports analogy to that are sort of like in the locker room now. We're about to go and play the game, and there's some element on subconsciously of that type of stuff. So there has to be some kind of psych up thing. But once they get over the ocean, the music changes. It becomes very sinister, and the shots are of human beings in absolute terror of the meat grind that they are about to be dropped into. Sure. So I think he totally squares the circle on all of this stuff, and there has to be some element of that. You can't help but deny that this is attractive in some way. But he's also showing like that. I mean, the Kim Coates thing, where he's like blown apart and is still alive, or an RPG going through a body, which really happened. He's not reckless about the stuff that he puts in there.
You can feel it's very.
He was, they're trying to be as authentic, at least with the
surgery is like unbearable.
I mean, in some ways, you'd have to be like some kind of very masochistic or delusional person to watch this movie and be like, I'm going to go sign up, because if did you not just watch what happened? But then it does offer the counter arguments of like, it's about the man next to you, and it's about the brotherhood, and it's about this and that, and that's all complicated. But
coming from a sociopath,
as a piece of drama, as a piece of filmmaking, I think this is one of the best, most powerful, effective, certainly like war movies ever made, and specifically as a combat movie, which it kind of created something unique that we will later see in films, one that we'll be covering, which has also got some complex politics, but I think is an amazing movie, 13 Hours, the Michael Bay movie.
I actually haven't seen it.
I mean, I think it's incredible, certainly as a piece of drama. Maybe, the politics are another issue, but as a piece of filmmaking, absolutely extraordinary stuff. And I feel that this kind of took the mantle from what Spielberg did in Saving Private Ryan and then made it an entire film. And I think it's extraordinary. I think this is an amazing film, and it's filled with brilliant performances and actors that you love. I'm sorry, I fucking love this movie.
Yeah, and my struggle is I just think that like I come back to the Godard quote that you can't. The tension is fine, but it's like it's just very off-putting to me.
Okay, let's move into the hero section. Look, we'll have to agree to some. It's not that I disagree. It's just that it's too close to Ridley and this film. I have to just, even when they're wrong, and I'm not saying they are wrong, but I still have to defend them.
I think it would be very stupid to be like, you can't like this movie because the politics are bad. But I do think it's important to say that there is an insidiousness to every war movie that's exciting ever made, because it is insidious, because it is really complicated. And like, I still enjoy these movies, to be clear, but like, I do think that there's also something about the veracity of the combat that like I find weirdly unimaginative and not that interesting to watch.
I mean, and perhaps the best ever deconstruction of the complexities of this stuff is Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Which looks at both the appeal of it and is also aware that it's there's a repugnant propagandization, if that is a word.
Crucially shields you and allows you to think about that stuff by not dehumanizing an entire group of people. You're fighting bugs, right? Like, I think that allows those ideas to come through.
Let's talk about the hero briefly. Josh Hartnett as Sergeant Matt Eversman, the idealist.
Yeah.
You know, he's described as an idealist, and you know, that's something that I relate to. The idea that you know, he comes across as a guy, and why I like him, maybe another reason why this resonates with me is like that he's not someone that's just looking to like shoot people. He genuinely believes in the mission and believes in the idea of doing good and helping people. And, you know, in that early scene where you see the food, the militia killing people to seize the food, and that the international law prevents them from interfering, even though they're killing civilians, and you sort of see the powerlessness and complexity of that situation. You know, he really wants to go in and do something, but the rules of engagement prevent them from doing so. And it's also a kind of a story of he's recently promoted. Because it's actually Johan Gruffyard's character who has an epileptic seizure. He's actually supposed to be the lieutenant who would be in charge, but or the staff sergeant, whatever it is. And Eversman gets promoted because is sent home. So he's dropped into this situation, and it's kind of a cometh the hour, cometh the man story about an inexperienced commander having to lead in this brutal situation, and he loses one of his young charges, the character of Blackburn, played by Orlando Bloom, immediately with a freak accident.
He falls, right? He
falls out.
I kind of forgot it was him that fell, and I was like, "Where's Orlando Bloom?" And then, of course, you know, he goes first. Do you think he has a character arc?
Not particularly. I think it's a little bit of a kind of loss of innocence story. You know. To some extent, like but he's not. He comes across as pretty competent and tough without being toxic, right?
Josh Hartnett's a real soulful guy. I love Josh Hartnett.
He's great, and he's having this wonderful
Renaissance now. We got to add that fight or flight movie to the list. I think that's his Die Hard.
Yeah. Great.
Who knows? It's gonna be good. And Trap. We have to put Trap on the list.
Trap is on the bubble.
I love Trap.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining, and I thought Josh is fantastic.
He's really a great soulful actor.
He does a nice job of like, and you have to be quite young, or most of these guys are pretty young.
And he's
you know, to be a leading man and hold this massive ensemble and and the canvas in which Ridley is painting is so massive. You know, so to have a human, you know, it's no mean feat. He doesn't overdo it, and he's not like going for the acting Oscar or anything. He just plays it all very natural and real. I think he's great in this.
I know I've spent some time complaining about this film, but from a purely filmmaking standpoint, like in another world, this would be up for some serious awards, because the acting is like, the first 20 minutes, I have some issues with some of it, but I think once they get in, I almost wish this movie just began with the raid. I think I would like this movie more if it didn't give you any of these characters. Like, one of the things I love about Dunkirk, not interested. Just
gets on with it.
And I think that weirdly would make it feel less politically charged if it was just like, let's go. Like, they're on the gunships going into Mogadishu. Like, that would be sick to me a little bit, because I think the first 20, 30 minutes of this movie are like really slow goings and revving up the engine, and also like, and some cliches are true, but relies on some certain cliches in establishing these characters.
It's always like
doing the impression of the captain, and like
Quentin Dennis used to do this sketch that was like spot the stiff in World War II movies, and it would be the guy that's like, oh, after the war, well, I just got my piano lessons, after the war, and it's like your hands blown off, right? You know,
totally.
I just got trials for Bolton Wanderers, legs blown off.
You know, it's like, you know, when you're watching Saving Private Ryan, and who's that actor? Who's the speech about he used to pretend he was asleep when his mom would come home, and you're like, that guy's dying. That guy's, like that
Right,
kind of
right.
like the movie forecasts a little.
And it inevitably has to be a bit skin deep with the weight because there's not enough time. There's so many characters to set up.
But then in my mind, don't do it.
Yeah. It's a fair point. Would it be a better or worse film if it just started?
I didn't
with the
see
raid?
Warfare, that new.
I haven't seen it either, and I think it's definitely that movie doesn't exist without this. There was even
100%.
there was this, what was it called? Act of Valor. There was this movie that was straight up funded by the U.S. Navy as a recruitment tool, and made them. I watched it. The trailer was unbelievable. Had this incredible Snow Patrol track on it, and it was very like, wow, this looks amazing. And the hook of it was, we're not using actors, we're using real Navy SEALs.
It's like
using
15 to 70 to Paris.
Real tactics. And guess what? They can't act, and it's awful for that reason. And it's a lot. It's like the Armageddon thing. It's easier to teach actors how to do Navy SEAL tactics on film than it is to teach Navy SEALs how to act.
You got to know how to hold the camera. It's a real thing.
It's really. But my point is, that's the legacy of these films don't exist. Warfare, Act of Valor, whatever, without.
And
Black
this
Hawk
might not
Down.
exist without Saving Private Ryan, which might not exist without Platoon. Like, there's a whole trajectory of these movies.
The villains of this, but there isn't really like there's two characters who will be considered the quote unquote villains, as ugly as it is to sort of say that, but they are militia. George Harris as the arms dealer Osman Ali Atto, who's awesome.
Captured at
the guy that's captured, and he's like he's puffing on the cigar. They're having
makes me want to smoke a
cigar off with Shepard.
You know what's a nice little moment when he's like, "These are Cubans," and Sam Severs says, "So are these," and he's like, "Sure they are." Like, I like the seductive,
Miami, my friend,
the
is not
seductive,
Cuba.
the seductive nature of being the bad guy, so to speak.
He's terrific in his scene, and Razak Adoti as Mo Alim, the main commander of Adid's militia, who was just, I think, called Sunglasses in the.
He has no lines in the movie, right? Maybe one.
In the book, yes, but again, they're pretty sort of two-dimensional. The George Harris characters does try to widen up the context a little bit, but there's not too much to really say about them because there's not much there, and we do have quite a lot to cover. So we'll great actors, great performances.
Can I ask a potentially provocative question? Is Jason Isaacs the villain of this movie?
Well, we're going to come to him shortly, so we'll get into that. But let's talk about this. We're going to skip the humor section, so we'll wrap up Anatomy of an Action Movie by talking about the action. Now, you cannot fucking criticize the action in this movie, dude. This is unbelievable stuff.
It's really good, and it's one of those movies where, that great quote about how Steven Soderbergh, was like, I could watch Mad Max Fury Road for the rest of my life and not understand how they did it.
Yeah.
Same thing with this.
Agreed.
It's almost like,
how the hell did they coordinate all of this stuff?
It's so well coordinated, and he probably shot it in like 15 minutes because he's just like such a gifted. Not enough could be made of Ridley's ability as traffic controller. Like, it's so expertly staged and well made, and like,
I mean, you really do feel like you're watching a really chaotic war, and
totally.
not just as seen through the 6 inches in front of your face on a massive scale.
It also manages to keep the stakes up despite not necessarily having any sense of like where the crash zone is in relation to other, like, it doesn't, like Top Gun Maverick does this incredible job of being like, here are the 4 things that need to happen for the climax of this movie to work. Like, it keeps teaching you as an audience member what you need to understand for this sequence to work. This movie doesn't do that. It's just like, we got to get to the crash zone, but it's not like you see it laid out on those charts and graphs, but like, he doesn't. Ridley's so good at orchestrating chaos.
Yeah.
That, and like, I'll give them credit. Every time someone crossed a square, I was like, they're going to get shot. They're going to get shot. They're going to get shot. And even if they didn't, it's still like tense.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the very least, this is an incredibly powerful experience. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you can't deny.
I got a little choked up when they run into the stadium. I felt my like, that kind of, despite being like, I love that. Annoyed by it.
I love that part. I find it very. I know you say you find it sort of the exoticizing of the children. I find it very kind of lyrical.
It is lyrical. It's just, if you think about it for a second, it gets tricky.
Yeah,
I think.
All right. Well, I think this is an incredible action movie, and I think it's arguably the best combat movie ever made. But let's take our fatigues off, put our tuxedos on, and head to the Die Hard Oscars.
I'm leaving my fatigues on.
The John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line. I've got 4, all of which I suspect you're gonna hate. Because you're not a patriot, Liam.
Yeah, you know me.
Hoot says, once that first bullet goes past your head, politics and all that shit just goes right out the window.
Yeah,
I know you're going to hate.
Hate that one.
To your point earlier, the character of Harold says, life's imperfect. And McKnight, played by Tom Sizemore, goes, yeah, for you two, circling above it all at 500 feet, it's imperfect.
Like that more.
Down in the street, it's unforgiving, which I think is
That's a good
fantastic. And there's another line from Hoot that I wrote down where he says, see, you're thinking, don't, because Sergeant, you can't control who gets hit or who doesn't or who falls out of chopper and why. It ain't up to you. It's just war. Pretty interesting, but maybe kind of quite existential, that line.
I guess.
You know,
I struggle with the like, don't think, don't use your brain. And I understand. You're in a combat situation. It's like, you know, let me weigh the ethics of this situation. I'm not stupid, but I also just feel like there's a lot of ideology in that line.
Sure. And the last one is Eversman's line, which closes out the film, that says, nobody asks to be a hero. It just sometimes turns out that way.
Yeah.
Which is one of those things where we know if you could totally reject that or you could completely embrace it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a pretty good summation of the film, but maybe it's Danny McKnight's, Danny McKnight, that's not his name. Is it Danny McKnight? It is Danny McKnight. Yeah, Danny McKnight, played by Tom Sizemore, saying that line, probably the best.
Go with the quote that opens the movie. Only the dead have seen the end of war.
Yeah, sadly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We are also, in case this seems a little bit more charging, we're not going to talk about it. We're recording this at a pretty weird time in the world. Anyway, moving on to lighter matches, the Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film. So our nominees are someone who I know you're not going to give it to. Eric Bana as Hoot, Sam Shepard as General, William Garrison, Ron Eldard as Michael Durant, the pilot of Super 6-4, who is taken hostage. He's fantastic. And Tom Sizemore as Lieutenant Colonel Danny McKnight.
Sizemore stands rise up. Amazing performance. Just like, I want to stare into that guy's eye. He's amazing in this movie. He walks away with the movie. He's such a loss. Great actor.
I can't deny it, but I do think, you know, Ron Eldard, I saw play, he was in American Buffalo at the Geffen here, and he played Teach. And he was
Who else was in it?
Fantastic. Bill Smitrovich.
Oh, wow.
Played,
oh, my God.
I forget the name of the character.
Nick of Time and...
Nick of Time, Air Force One, Manhunter, one of those great faces.
Yeah. You know, also, the guy who plays Sam Shepard's right-hand... Oh, never mind. This might be a trivia question. I'm going to save it.
Okay. Finally, and I think I know who your pick is going to be, but this this could be interesting. This is going to be our last one today. We're not going to do best death for pretty obvious reasons. Not far too many candidates and not really appropriate for this movie based on true events, of course.
No more table.
So the Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie, I've got two nominees, Eric Bana as Hoot and Jason Isaacs as Captain Steele.
Dick of the Movie? Oh, it's Eric Bana. It's 100%. It's Hoot. I hate this guy. I hate this fucking guy. And, you know, Eric Bana is an amazing actor. I love Eric. In fact, you know, one of the thoughts I had in this movie? I wish Eric Bana were in more movies because I think he's great. I think he's amazing in Munich. He's really funny. Like he's good in the Apatow movie that he's in, Funny People, I think it is. But like, it's just so like my fear is that the least brilliant among us will watch it and be like, this guy's right. This guy's got it figured out. Like listen, I have never been in the military. I was, in fact, told by my father, do not join the military. I was raised in that environment. I'm like a big lefty, but I will say that, like, I think these kinds of characters in this movie convey, like, the antithesis of what these movies should convey. And that's not to take away from the fact that, like, if you go through combat and have an experience with someone and that brings you closer together, like, I'm not here to say that experience is right or wrong. I'm not going to invalidate the experience of a soldier. Like, that is an incredibly harrowing and painful thing to go through, and I could never possibly understand it. That said, I think that, like, weirdly, the takeaway from this movie is it's about the guy next to you, which feels like a recruiting ad to me a little bit. And that's why I hate this character. But I think Bana's good.
Fair enough. I would put him in there simply for pushing into the chow line. And walking around the base with a hot weapon. And he's like, kind of a dick. You know, he's a dick. He is a dick.
Yeah, you're right. That's good. I forgot about that. And, you know, I think Jason Isaacs is a wonderful actor. Yeah. And he's the greatest dick of all time in The Patriot, like maybe the greatest dick performance of all time. But I weirdly, by the end of the film, feel like I understand that guy a little bit better.
He's actually not that bad
he's
at
just
all.
a hard ass.
And he's a by-the-book sort of guy. He's not. He struggles to improvise.
Yeah.
But I think that's the right choice. Let's take one last break and then wrap things up with our Double Jeopardy trivia quiz where the scores can really change. We'll be right back. Hey, do you hate ads?
Us too.
Which is why we took a stand against our corporate overlords and turned them off.
But Phil, when we started this podcast, we became mercenaries, and mercenaries get paid. Now I want my money!
Well, yes, while it turns out that money is still required in this society to be exchanged for goods and services, we only want to align with the right kind of companies. And that, my friends, is where you come in, because we are now actively reviewing sponsorship proposals for Die Hard on a Blank.
Imagine it. Your company could sponsor an entire segment of the show, such as Fast Facts or Die Hard DNA.
Maybe the Die Hard Oscars or the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz.
Or perhaps the whole darn show.
Yes, that's right, people. This is your chance to opportunize your message across a curated cross-platform engagement pipeline.
To activate paradigm-shifting thought leadership with boots-on-the-ground vibecraft.
In other words, if we can achieve brand synergy, maybe your company could be a sponsor on this show.
So if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of our highly popular and critically acclaimed podcast, email us at diehardoab@gmail.com and we can start a conversation.
That's diehardoab@gmail.com.
Sponsorship sons
Rise up! And we're back with our final section of the show, the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz. So we're going to launch right into this one with question number 1. And one of these has already been spoiled. So
Sorry.
Listening attentively. No, it's all right. It's not a problem.
Just my encyclopedic knowledge of the film Under Siege.
I can't believe that one. I'm really annoyed about that. But okay. Name the 3 members of the Black Hawk Down ensemble cast who also appear in Michael Mann's Heat.
Tom Sizemore. Shit. Tom Sizemore. Fuck. Oh my God. This is embarrassing.
You can have
to
a clue if you need. It's okay. One of these actors plays a bank robber, one of them plays a money launderer, and one of them plays a compromised doctor.
Oh, Piven.
One
of them plays a money launderer. Who plays the money launderer? Voight's not in this. No, he doesn't. He's not a money launderer.
Come on, Liam. With what we've got going on, you want to play World War III in the streets with Van Zandt?
Oh my God. Who is it? It's Zelko. No, it's not Zelko.
No.
Who is it?
It's William Fichtner.
Oh, fuck me. You and your friends are dead. William Fichtner.
I'm talking to an empty telephone.
Oh my God. Well, I'm just thinking of him in The Dark Knight when he plays like the same character.
Yes.
You and your friends are dead.
What an actor. I love him. He's great in this.
He is kind of what I wish the Eric Bana character was like. Like, no nonsense, get it done, you know? Yeah.
And he kind of looks after the Ewan McGregor character.
I love that dynamic. Ewan McGregor is GOAT. He's so... It's crazy that this is after a Star Wars movie, and he's like, yeah, I'll do like 40 minutes, and he's such a good actor.
Question number 2. Die Hard star Bruce Willis and Black Hawk Down star Josh Hartnett both appeared in which star-studded 2000 film that features a similarly stacked cast?
Lucky Number 11? No.
Oh, yeah. I've actually forgot that they were both in that, but that wasn't the answer to this one.
Can I have the clue?
The clue is the film was co-directed by Robert Rodriguez and the author of the comic book series upon which the movie was based.
Sin City.
Is correct.
Are you a Sin City guy?
Yes, with caveats.
I had like a huge existential feeling about when that movie. I was like, what is that? And I never read the comic book and I never saw the sequel, but that first movie is really well made and cool.
Yeah.
But it's gross also in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, well, Frank Miller is a genius who's a tough hand.
Yeah. Right.
Let's put it that way. Convoluted Corner was going to be which other Die Hard on a Blank film previously covered on this podcast also used Jimi Hendrix's song Voodoo Child and juxtaposed it with military imagery. I can't believe you got that one.
In fairness, that song rocks. And it's very memorable.
Glenn Morshower also appears in both of the films.
He does, and he's in The River Wild. right at the end. Yeah, Brendan Warshauer's kind of been around.
And he's in Tango and Cash.
Okay, so the thing that I was going to say, I don't know the actor's name, but the actor who plays Sam Shepard's right-hand man appears briefly in The Rock as one of the guys around the table who's the one who goes, when the president goes like, how hard will it be for us to arm a series of jets to intercept? He goes, like, an act of God.
Right.
That's him. That's the same actor who is Sam Shepard's right-hand man in this movie. 100%. 100%.
Okay.
Listen, you don't get them all, okay? It's not Pokemon. I
know that actor, but he's on Kates and Ziggs from Under Siege. So...
No, hang on.
Yeah.
Let's look it up.
I'm not totally...
Vamp.
Okay.
Vamp.
Well, I was about to say, and I had a perfect transition there, that actor Glenn Morshower also appears in Tango and Cash, which is coming up next time on 48 Hours of Buddy Movies, our Patreon feed. Just to remind you, that's www.patreon.com/48 Hours of Buddy Movies, as in the numbers 48. We did get the good news that you can now sign up through the app without the additional surcharge. Although I think Liam advised to wait a couple of months because things are changing around that. But basically, if you want to play it safe, sign up through your web browser at www.patreon.com/48 Hours of Buddy Movies and get full access to that show, where we look at 48 Hours' influence on the buddy movie genre, one buddy movie at a time. Tango and Cash, I think, will be about our 15th or 16th film. For $5 a month, you get 2 new movies a month and full access to the library as it grows. Yes. Did you check?
I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Because it's such a minor part. But I swear it's the same guy.
Well, I know the guy that you're talking about. And it's not the guy that I picture. So
let me do this.
But let's.
It doesn't matter.
Who cares? It's not about right or wrong.
It's about
I don't know what it's. Well, it is, I guess, but I don't know. I'm floundering now over this thing as you.
Next time on this show.
Next time on this show, let's get back on track. Panic Room.
Oh boy, we got a good guest for that one.
Just
got
rewatched
a good guest
it.
Lined up.
Great movie.
It is a good movie.
Really cool, stripped down thriller, very, very stylish.
It's our first Fincher film.
Yeah, a lot of Die Hard DNA in that one, so join us for that. Thanks to Tyson Hubley, as always, for doing our wonderful art. Rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. Force people to listen to the show.
Just sign up on their phone. Sign them up on their phone.
Please do consider signing up on the Patreon. We love doing that show.
Yeah,
and there's a whole community, and you get to be part of it.
Lots
and interact.
of chat.
A lot of bants.
A lot of bants. Is that? I like bants. Bants is fun.
Tom Sizemore will be back in Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, coming soon on that show.
I don't think I realized he was in that movie.
He's the villain.
Well, we'll be back next time on this feed with a very young Kristen Stewart. Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast from Philip Gothorn and Liam Billingham. Tyson Hubley makes our art. You can hear exclusive episodes of our Patreon show at patreon.com/48 Hours of Buddy Movies. Rate, review, subscribe, and tell your action movie loving friends about the show. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.
Hi guys, it's Phil
and Liam
from Die Hard on a Blank, and we're excited to talk to you about a brand new podcast we're launching called 48 Hours of Buddy Movies.
That's right, folks. 48-hour-long
approximately
episodes exploring 48 different buddy movies, beginning with the original classic that started it all, Walter Hill's 1982 masterpiece, 48 Hours, starring Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy.
And just like Die Hard on a Blank, our new show will explore the influence of 48 Hours on the action genre, one buddy movie at a time.
We'll be covering iconic franchises such as the Beverly Hills Cop movies, the Stakeout movies, the Bad Boys movies, classics of the genre like Running Scared,
Iam's Hive Rise Up,
Midnight Run, Red Heat, Tango and Cash, The Hard Way,
plus tough thrillers such as To Live and Die in LA, Black Rain, Point Break, Training Day, and The Way of the Gun.
As well as a few wild cards that you might not expect, such as RoboCop, Alien Nation, and, of course, Phil's favorite.
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
So if you're a fan of two buddies talking buddy movies,
then 48 Hours of Buddy Movies is for you.
Visit patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies to subscribe for the price of 1 cup of coffee a month.
See you in the squad car.
Or walking to the squad car, mildly irritated that we've been paired off.
Wherever. That's patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies to subscribe.